ST 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? Wheel and Audio here today on episode 313 of The Hodder Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. I've got a really fun and brand new segment for you here today. Let's just say it's something that's been a long time coming, and I'm so excited to get into it with you guys. But before I even tell you what we're going to be talking about here today, I need to take a second to thank everybody for their support on the last episode of the show, my chat with Lee Ibanez. Man, that was such a fun chat. Lee, thank you so very much, buddy, for coming on. It was great to reconnect with you and be able to share your journey over the last few years with Clovercast and kind of everything that's been going on with you the last 4 years. Let's not wait 4 years again for you to make another appearance on the show and to chat, because that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. It's always great getting to reconnect with people from the early days of the podcast, or, you know, from before the podcast, but always fun. Just like this new segment we're doing here today on the show. This has been such a long time coming, and it seems so silly that I haven't done anything like this before. I've done, you know, lists of, in the early days of the show, for those who haven't been listening since day one, which is a lot of people, back in the day, used to do a lot of solo podcasts, like this one is going to be, in which I would talk about, you know, top 10 lists of things, or, oh, my favorite this, or what I think about this or that. It's something that I don't really do as much anymore, but I had this idea to do something that someone actually, I've been asked about this tons of times on the show, whether it's in interviews or someone will say something in an interview and it'll kind of trigger me to want to talk about this. On the show a lot, when I'm interviewing people, we talk about influences, and we talk about, you know, records that they love and albums they love and bands they love, and why those records or bands are important to them in their growth as an artist. I get asked a lot the same questions about me, my upbringing with music, the music I enjoyed, the albums that made me. And that's what we're going to be doing here today on this brand new segment that I'm going to be doing here on The Hodder Show, Albums That Made Me. This is something that I've wanted to do for a long time. It's something that I could potentially do with guests. I'm really excited about this. 2 new segments in the span of a couple episodes is something that's never happened before. Of course, we have Hodder's Hits and Misses, which is going to be a thing going forward. However, I can't really do it on an older record, you know, and that's something that I really wanted to dive into, where we dive into a little bit of the behind the record and the band at that time period, and why I love the band, why I love the record, some stories about the record and the band, and, you know, how I discovered them and things of that nature. And then I'll kind of do a quick track by track commentary, what I like about each track, or if I don't like the track for some reason or whatever, which you're probably not going to find a lot on this, because these are the albums that made me. So these are the records that, for one reason or another, are either still a huge part of my life, or were such a huge part of my life when I was growing up as a music fan that I have to talk about them. These are the records that made me into the human being that I am today, and made me into the music fan that I am today. Now, some people might assume that there's going to be bands and records, of course, I'm going to talk about it. It's going to be pretty obvious. If you listen to my podcast, you probably know I'm a massive Alice in Chains fan. I'm a big Godsmack fan, Stain, Seether, you know, just to name a few, Seven Dust. You know, there's tons of bands that I could talk about, records that really molded me into the person I am today and the music fan that I am today. But there's one band and one record that I kind of, to be honest, kind of overlooked for a while as to how much of an influence it really had on me. And I didn't really appreciate the influence it had on me until quite a few years later. And that is the reason I wanted to start this brand new segment The Albums That Made Me, with Cold's Year of the Spider. If you are not familiar with the American rock band Cold, they're from Jacksonville, Florida, and they were actually formed in 1986 by Scooter and drummer Sam, who are both still in the band to this day. There was a little bit of a time where Sam left, but he's still in this band today, and he was a part of the making of Year of the Spider. He was the drummer of the band. Of course, Scooter was the singer, but we'll get all into that in a minute or two here. But these guys formed this band in high school in 1986, man. And that's really cool to think about. The history of this band goes all the way back to when these guys were in high school. That's really something to think about. And that kind of plays a bit of a role here for me as well, I think, as to why this band kind of was under the radar for me as such a huge inspiration. That is one reason why, just because of how long they had been doing it. Now, Grundig did break up when Scooter went back to Jacksonville, Florida, because at the time they were actually in Neptune Beach. And he formed a new band called Diablo with, again, McCandless on drums and a guitarist named Kelly Hayes. And that band only lasted for about 3 months. And at the end of that, they reformed Grundig under the name Cold in 1996. Now, this was in Jacksonville, Florida, 1996. So anyone who knows their history of Jacksonville, Florida, the music scene around that time period, the late 90s, early 2000s, you know damn well that Fred Durst was all over that. So they actually caught the attention of Fred Durst, and he ended up recording a couple of tracks with them. The demos was passed on to producer Ross Robinson, who was super impressed, and they ended up actually working on their debut album entitled Cold with him, which is a self-titled Cold. And then basically, long story short, they were signed on to Geffen Interscope Records a year later, which is pretty cool. They did start off on A&M Records, and then, which folded and turned into Geffen Interscope. And one really cool thing about Cold, and we're going to break down a whole bunch of stuff about Cold here today, because one thing I want to do on these is make sure I talk a little bit about the history of the band and why I love them so much. One thing that's really cool about Cold that really set them apart is the logo for the band. A lot of bands will have a logo of some kind, but it's usually something kind of generic, if we're being honest. And one cool thing about Cold is, it's the name of the freaking record we're talking about here today, for God's sakes, Year of the Spider. The spider logo from Cold is so iconic. A lot of people know the logo, but they don't necessarily know. There are people, I've seen tattoos of this logo before. And I want to say that there's some people that don't even know what the logo is. But it's Cold. It's their logo. That spider logo you guys are seeing, if you look up Year of the Spider, that badass logo that's so associated with Cold actually came from their EP, Oddity. And it was a photo taken by the drummer Sam's wife. And it was their pet tarantula named Wednesday crawling on the face of a doll. And the band thought it was such a cool thing, and they ended up just keeping it. And, they ended up turning it into a tattoo, and it just became the official logo. And one really cool thing to note is that the drummer Sam would kind of later on note that our music kind of creeps along like a spider. And especially the early days of Cold with that self-titled record and then their follow-up record, that really fits them. Their music is very moody, it's heavy, it's passionate, it's raw, and it kind of does creep along like a spider. That's something that I didn't know and found out about while I was kind of doing some looking up for this record. And I really thought that was cool, man. I really, really did. And that first record is so fun to go back and listen to, because it really is a different record, man. Like it almost kind of sounds like a different, it's very nu metal-y. Like Give is kind of was like the lead single off that record, and the music video actually stars Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst. It's super cool. You got to go check it out. It's such a such a badass record. And it kind of almost is like, it's a different sound. And, you know, Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst, who are both, you know, really big into Cold, and especially in those early days, they define, you know, Davis described it as scary and weird, and Fred Durst said, "This is the most real record I've felt in years," which is super cool, you know, and it's really cool to go back and listen to this record, because to me, it's not like it's super different from what ended up being that sound that Cold had, their super unique sound, but it's almost like the way Scooter's singing is very different. And it's a little, some would say almost it's a little heavier. But then, you know, moving on from that, they released their second studio record, 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage. And this is the record that really did it for them. This is the record that a lot of people know. When you mention the band Cold, a lot of people know this record from that era, even if they don't necessarily know who the band is. I've talked to people before who are fans of that era of music, and I'll play Just Got Wicked for them, which was the single, like that's the big single off 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage. Badass song. And they'll be like, "Oh my God, like, I know this song. That's Cold. Like, oh, that's badass." And then I always say to them, "Yo, like, go back and listen to that full record, and go back and listen to whole bunch of, you know, I mean, their whole catalog, obviously, but to me, 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage, it's such a great record. It's a really moody, heavy record. And my introduction to Cold actually stems from this record. And that's why this is, again, so fun for me, just to go back and you know, tell this story. My journey with Cold started in, I might get my timeline a little screwed up here, but my introduction to Cold started in 2005, 2006, somewhere in that ballpark. I've just entered high school. I was 15, 16 years old, you know, or my second year of high school, somewhere in that ballpark. I'm not going to freak out about the timeline. I, at the time, was, and still am, a massive fan of Stained and Aaron Lewis specifically. And at this time, I was really into and getting into music and writing and wanting to form a band and wanting to write songs. More than anything, just wanting to write and record stuff, record songs. And I would write lyrics all the time. Like this, I'd have booklets of lyrics and song ideas and all this stuff. And for me, Aaron Lewis was a huge inspiration on me, and still is to this day. I love Aaron Lewis, you know, and I was really taking in all of the content I could from Aaron Lewis and Stained, who I have a feeling we will hear about at some point on this segment, because, I mean, come on. But one day I was on YouTube, as I used to do. I'd come home from school and probably not do my homework because I was a bad student. And I would sit there and write, and I'd play guitar, and I'd look up songs and the meaning behind songs and stuff. And I went through this phase where I would just go home and I would go on YouTube, because YouTube had really just started really being this big platform to find music on. And obviously LimeWire too, but for the most part, YouTube. I'd look up live videos and stuff. And one day I just happened to type in Aaron Lewis, because I was just like, whatever, you know, I was obsessed with Aaron Lewis, blah, whatever, you know. So I typed in Aaron Lewis, and this song popped up that I'd never heard before by a band called Cold. And the song was called Bleed, featuring Aaron Lewis. Now, for me, I was like, okay, I don't know who this band is. I had a pretty open mind, but also, like, you know, I was like, I have my bands, I'm good, you know, like that was kind of my attitude. I was a really weird kid when it came to music. But, you know, I clicked on it and I was like, I want to check this song out. I got to take in everything I can of Aaron Lewis. Like, I wanted to be Aaron Lewis, you know. I didn't have the freaking vocal chops for it, but that's another story for another time. So I watched this video. And if you guys are familiar with Cold's song Bleed, it is a beautiful, dark, and raw acoustic song. It's just 2 acoustic guitars, a little bit of strings in the background for the chorus, and it's just Scooter and Aaron Lewis singing together. And it is one of the best performances vocally I think I've ever heard. It's incredible. And I was not familiar with Cold or Scooter Ward. So what was kind of funny at the time, and I can admit this to myself now, when I first saw and heard Scooter, I was kind of like, I mean, he kind of looks like Aaron Lewis. Because, like, you know, at the time, both him and Aaron, they had, like, super short buzz cut hair. They were, like, dressed the same. They both had acoustic guitars. And I was kind of like, what is this Cold? Like, are they like a... I think I thought something silly, like, oh, they're like a copy band of Stained or whatever, which is so ridiculous, but it's like, you know, I was a kid, I was 15, like, I don't know, you know, that's just how you think when you're a kid and don't know any better. But then he started to sing, and Scooter's voice is so raw and unique, and just, he could literally sing anything and it would really pull at your heartstrings. And it's so different compared to other vocalists of this era, because he has great range, he has great power, but he doesn't necessarily like rely on that. It's almost just like he's more worried about getting the emotion in his voice out. And he doesn't have to go super high. He doesn't have to scream and throw tons of grit in all the time to get the emotion across that he's singing. He can almost kind of keep things pretty mellow all across the board with some songs. Now, obviously, he can do all the other stuff too, as we're going to talk about. But that was something to me that just right away I was like, holy shit, this guy is raw, and like, he's singing, and the words that he's singing, I'm just like, holy shit, like, this is like, you know, Bleed. It's literally the song, essentially in a nutshell, from my interpretation anyway, is about how music is his way to bleed and to, you know, that's his therapy. That's his way to get his emotion out. And that's what it means to him. No matter what, he always needs music in his life, because that's why it's so important to him. It's so important to him, you know? And that's something that really resonated with me. So I immediately looked up Cold Bleed, popped up, and what I would do is I go on Wikipedia and I just search bands. I'd want to know everything about a band. So I looked up Cold, and I found 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage. And I was like, hell yeah. So I went out and bought 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage, like that weekend, I'm pretty sure. And I took in that album front to back. Love that record. Absolutely love it. There were some moments that were almost a little too heavy for old TJ at the time. I wasn't as much of a fan of some parts, which is kind of hilarious to think about now, because I'm into like really heavy shit now too. And I love that record. Absolutely loved it, man. And then I discovered that, hey, they have other records too. Because while I was at the record store, I found Cold. Back in the day, we had these things called record stores, kids. And you could walk into these stores and they would have CDs, and you could buy the CDs and have the physical copy of it. So that was a really lame joke. But what was super cool was they had 2 records. They had multiple copies of them, but they had 2 records from Cold. They had, of course, 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage, which was my introduction to Cold. And then they had a record that had a really interesting cover. And it was Year of the Spider. And it had come out, of course, in 2003. So a couple years before, 2005, which essentially is when this was happening. And I was unsure, because I was like, my whole thing is like, when I really love a record, I want to take in that record until I just can't anymore and I need to move on. And then I'll still love that record, but I won't listen to it like on repeat all the time. So I was kind of hesitant about checking out anything else from them because I wanted to just take in this record. So it took me a couple of months to, jump in to this record. But man, when I did finally jump into the record, I mean, what the hell can I say? It changed the game for me. It was such a heavy record, but also had some just beautiful moments, super dark moments, raw moments that just like, it was so brutally raw that I just, it really struck a chord with me, man. And yes, it's their most commercially successful record. And some people say, 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage is darker and it's better, blah, 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 blah. And man, to me, I think this record is a masterpiece from top to bottom. Now, this record was produced by Howard Benson and Cold. They helped with production. And on this record, we had Scooter Ward on vocals, Kelly Hayes on guitar, who again was in the original formation of Cold, Jeremy Marshall, who also was in the original formation of Cold, Sam McCandless, who was the drummer in the original formation of Cold, and then we added in a new guitarist, actually technically from the last record, but someone who some fans might know. His name is Terry Balsamo. Now, if you are a fan of Evanescence, Terry Balsamo. He's the guy who joined up with Evanescence after Ben Moody left for their second record. Anything after their first record, that's all Terry Balsamo, and he's a badass guitarist. I loved his work with Cold, and this actually was the last record that Terry and Kelly Hayes were on. And to me, when I think of Cold, their guitar style, this is the era I think of. The 2000 to 2005 era of Cold is really what I love. And don't get me wrong, I love, and I'm going to talk about some of their other stuff at the end of this talk here, because I want to talk about what they've done since this record, because I love all their work. Let me be super clear on that. But we're focusing on Year of the Spider here. And man, like when I heard the beginning of the record and I dove in, it kicked my ass. And I was such a fan of Scooter Ward's voice and the guitar work, specifically, obviously, as a guitar player and as someone who wanted to sing. That's really what drew me towards this. And it is a 13-track record featuring some songs that people know these songs, man. If you were around in that era, you know these songs. And it's something that, there's a lot of different topics to talk about. There's songs about drug abuse, relationships, obviously the deaths of two grunge icons, blatant criticism of the music industry, and as well as dealing with a really personal tragedy. And as someone who, I think what drew me so much to Cold, and specifically to Scooter Ward and his writing and his singing, is there is a blatant, raw honesty, which some would almost say maybe to a fault, because there's stuff I'm sure that, Scooter was writing about that, that's be heavy shit to talk about. And he's on stage singing about it, just like the previous record, 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage, man. It's so raw and real. And that resonated with me a lot. Now, what we're going to do here is I'm going to talk about all 13 tracks, what I like about them, what they mean to me, if there's a significance, and give a little background on the tracks if I can. Obviously, I can't dive into every track in the background because I wasn't in the band. But if there's a story about a certain track that I think is fun or I can talk a little bit about, we will do that. But we have 13 tracks, as I mentioned. There's Remedy, Suffocate, Cure My Tragedy, Stupid Girl, Don't Belong, Wasted Years, Whatever You Became, Sad Happy, Rain Song, The Day Seattle Died, Change the World, Black Sunday, Kill the Music Industry. And then there is a hidden track, but we're gonna talk about that at the end here, because that track is really powerful. And as well as the main members of Cold that I listed earlier, it should also be noted that there were a bunch of different musicians on this, mostly for one track. There was a full string section, a full orchestra, so we'll talk about that when we get to that specific track, as well as a singer who's featured on one of the tracks as well, but we will get into that. So what I really suggest, if you guys don't know this record and you're listening to this, I mean, I'm probably kind of surprised, because I figured you're probably a fan of this record and this band if you're listening to this. But if for some reason you've never heard Cold's Year of the Spider, or it's been a while, pause the podcast and go listen to Year of the Spider right now, the full record, top to bottom. I'll wait here. Welcome back. I'm really lame, I know. We're going to dive in to each track here, man. And again, if there's a little something I can tell you about it, I'm going to. Or if it had an effect on me, I'm going to tell you about that too, because that's what I think is so interesting about this. Obviously, with each record, there's going to be specific songs that you really love and that resonate with you in one way or another. And obviously, this is going to be no different. So the first track that we have on Year of the Spider is Remedy. Absolute banger of a track to start off the record. Let me just say that. In my opinion, it's one of the best Cold riffs ever. As far as just right out of the gate, it's heavy, it's memorable. The second you hear it, you know that's Remedy and that's Cold. Right away. There's a few songs that Cold have that do that, obviously. Some of them are on this on this record, but to me, it's a song that gets me so amped up. I absolutely love the melody and the chorus. It's definitely it's a heavy song, but it's very accessible. It's not like it's too out there. It's not too dark. It's not too heavy. It's a perfect mixture of all the things that make Cold the killer band that they are. And, the bridge with the guitar work there from Kelly Hayes, it's such a, his lead work was so unique and has such a unique tone. Right away. And, Terry killing it with that killer riff, if in fact that is who played each thing on the record. I apologize if I get that wrong, even though I'm certain they're probably never going to hear this. I'm such a big fan of those guys and their playing. So as a guitar player who loved playing tuned down riffs in this style, Remedy's a hit for me, man. It's just, it's killer. I absolutely love Remedy. And it also was featured on some WWE games. I believe it was, sorry, no, it wasn't a game. It was Backlash 2003, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 2003. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was 2003. They used Remedy as their introduction song, which was without a doubt perfect for a for wrestling. Gets me amped up. Absolutely love Remedy. And the next track that we have here on Year of the Spider is Suffocate. Now, Suffocate, another classic guitar song from Cold. And this song, actually, speaking of WWE, this song was featured. I don't remember what pay-per-view it was, but there was was it Backlash 2000? No, I don't know. Maybe it was Backlash 2003. Whatever. I don't remember when it was specifically, but because at this time I was a huge wrestling fan too, right? So that's kind of fun to keep that in mind. There was a promo video of a feud going on between Test, rest in peace, and Scott Steiner, which if you're a wrestling fan, that was such a random feud, but they were feuding over Stacy Keibler, who was a female valet and Tess' actual real life girlfriend. So they were having this little feud, and it was all their Tess an asshole and Scott Snyder's trying to save Stacy and let her be who she wants, but Tess is a bad guy and blah, 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 blah. So I'm watching the pay-per-view and because obviously I watched this not live because it was, it was a little earlier, but when I watch this back, I'm listening to, I'm watching it and all of a sudden that riff starts. That like such a classic riff. The second you hear it, it's Suffocate. And I was like, wait, is this? And then the second it starts off, I'm like, holy shit, that's Suffocate by Cold. That's super cool, man. Such a badass song. The chorus with Scooter, and then the female vocalist, who definitely deserves a shout out, Swan, who is badass. She's been featured with the group before on 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage, as well as I believe she was on a couple other songs they've done, I do believe. But definitely, of course, was on Suffocate. And Sierra Swan's badass, man. She's got a super unique voice. I believe she released a full record not that long ago. So go check her out. Sierra Swan. She's badass. Obviously, as you heard in Suffocate. The trade-off that they're doing during the chorus, man, is just, it's powerful. It's a song, pretty self-explanatory, basically being in a suffocating relationship, and that's, at least that's what I get from it. And it's something everyone can relate to. Super powerful, man. Absolutely love Suffocate. Just that trade-off. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, the next song we have to talk about, it's without a doubt one of my favorite tracks on the record. It is such a beautiful, powerful, raw, emotion-filled song. And that is Cure My Tragedy, or A Letter to God. Cure My Tragedy, A Letter to God. It's called Cure My Tragedy, but in some, ways they'll have in the little parentheses like A Letter to God. And this is quite simply, it has a really deep meaning. And it's because Scooter actually wrote this song about his sister who was battling cancer at the time. A topic that he would actually pretty much do a whole record on, not quite the full record, but their next record, A Different Kind of Pain, which is a close second for me as far as being one of my favorite Cold record. That's a beautiful record. Maybe we'll talk about that one day. But it's definitely my favorite performance from Scooter. Maybe not my favorite, but definitely, top 5. Especially in the bridge, man, the rawness and the hurt in his voice, would you take and give her pain to me? Like, oh my God, like just, I teared up the first time I heard it, man, because it's so, just again, what Scooter Ward delivers his audience is a raw emotion, straight from his veins, man. That's what he gives his audience. And a song like Cure My Tragedy is the perfect example of that. And it's just unapologetically real and soul-bearing. And man, there's a couple live videos of them playing this song, and Scooter's performance live were always killer. But there was one video, I couldn't find it on YouTube. I was looking for it earlier, where I think they were playing on TV, and man, they're playing this song, and like he's not there, if that makes any sense. He was not on stage. He might as well have been singing that directly to her or to God, because just it comes from such a real place, man. And that's something that I really gravitate towards in my music. Is I need something raw and real, and it doesn't get much more real or raw than that, man. It really, really doesn't. A beautiful song. And I mean, of course, instrumentally, what's not to like, man? It's such a cool song. The guitar work, the rhythm section, absolutely killer. So the next track that we have here on Year of the Spider it's the song that made Cold big. It's their biggest song. Let's just get it out of the way. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows this song. It's one of the great breakup, heartbreak songs of all time. Killer riffage, powerful drum and bass work. Scooter laying down just some soaring vocals. We're talking about Stupid Girl. It's a killer song, man. The riffs, the whole melody of the song, the video for the song is so kind of fun and not too serious, but also it's super serious. And that freaking bridge, come on, the whole, what do they call it? The millennial woe or whatever, I think is the term some people use, the whoa, the woes and stuff from that era of music is such a silly thing, but man, like his power, and it's so, again, raw. You can feel the emotion in his voice as he's singing this song clearly to someone. And, it's one of those things where like, it's a great breakup song. When I went through my breakup, I was blasting this fucking song. You better believe it. So it's really great for that, man. And if you think this song does sound different compared to some of their other work, I mean, you're right, because it has a really interesting background compared to some of their other stuff. Obviously, with Cold, a lot of the guitar work and structure of the song, and that was by Cold. Obviously, they wrote their own stuff, and Kelly and Terry obviously were writing the guitars, and Scooter Scooter's a great guitar player too, so I'm sure he would help out and stuff. But what's interesting about this song is Scooter actually started working on this song apparently in 2002. And from the story that he told in an interview that I heard a long time ago, but I never forgot this, he apparently felt it was basically like a rip-off Weezer song, and they were touring with Weezer at the time. So he ended up reaching out to Rivers from Weezer. If you guys don't know, that's the front man of Weezer, Rivers Cuomo, to help out with the song. I guess maybe his thought was it could be a Weezer song. I don't know. But, Rivers ended up coming in and he wrote the intro and chorus riff, kind of assisted with the structure a little bit and lyrically, I guess. And just kind of went, you know what, man, like this is your song. Like this needs to be a Cold song. Because he was like, we can't do this song the way you guys could. And the rest is history, man. It's definitely a step in a much more commercial sound for Cold. And to date is one of the most popular songs. It's a song that you can actually still hear on the radio quite a bit. I know I've heard it on the radio the last couple of years, which always I freak out every time it comes on the radio because I'm just like, yes, like nothing makes me freaking happier than when this song comes on the radio. So yeah, Stupid Girl, what's not to like, man? It's just, and it doesn't have to be, it's like, oh, it's a song about guys breakups with girls and how they hate them at the time. And it's universal. It's just, it's a term. It's a song, obviously Stupid Boy could also be a song. You know what I mean? It's just a general overall breakup song. And killer freaking riffage. So yeah, Stupid Girl. There's a reason it's arguably, I guess, maybe their biggest song. I'd say it's their biggest song. Stupid Girl, absolutely badass. The next track is one that really strikes a chord with me, and that is Don't Be Long. Starting off, obviously, with that badass bass riff. I mean, come on. What's not to like? It's a song that, to me, especially when I was younger, man, I had a lot of, I don't want to say issues with, but just it's easier to say it that way. I had a lot of issues with feeling like I never fit in because I was a weird guy, still am to this day, weird and proud. What's up? But also, I was a musician. I was into wrestling. I was a big gamer. Like, I was a really super nerdy guy. Still am in many ways. But, I never really felt like I fit in with one identity, if that makes sense. I clung to my quote unquote musician identity throughout high school for the most part, grew my hair and all that shit. But at this time, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And this song essentially, like, it's, you know, like I'm not going to break down every lyric or anything, but, you know, overall to me, it's basically him saying, you know, like, please don't tell the world that I don't belong. I won't ever tell the world I don't belong, because of, you know, whether it's the things you go through in life, you might not feel like you belong with one particular group or in one area. And it's kind of an ode to that. And that was something, man, to me, that was really powerful. And it's such a cool song vocally and guitar wise. I mean, that classic kind of single note lead stuff, which to me, it sounds like Terry's playing that kind of tapping, you know, effecty type stuff, which he's so well known for, you know, whether it's his work in Evanescence now or with 13 Ways to Bleed on stage. And, you know, the drum work instrumentally, it's such a cool song. But then again, to me, man, like it really struck a chord with me. And that was something I needed to hear a lot of in that time period. It's just, it's a powerful song, man. Powerful song that I really, truly love. And, you know, as someone who needed to hear things like that at that time that could relate to other people, I think is what I'm kind of trying to say here. I'm losing my words a bit, but I needed to hear other people felt the same way as me, man. That's really what I needed to hear. And this song did that for me. And again, subconsciously, I clung to Scooter Ward a lot more than I realized with a song like Don't Belong, man. Badass song. Definitely one of my favorites on the record. Now, the next song we have is definitely a big standout for the record, and it should be a song that everyone knows, in my opinion. And it's called Wasted Years. Now, this song is super powerful, beautiful. I mentioned about how there were other musicians on this record playing string section, and of course, conductor and string arrangements was actually by Deborah Lurie, or Lurie, excuse me. Big shout outs to her for that. Man, it's a beautiful song, and lyrically, I think might be one of my favorite Cold songs. It's one of my favorite performances from Scooter. I think it might be his best performance as far as showing off what he can really do vocally. It's definitely one of them. Guitar work, acoustic guitar work, man, from Terry Balsamo is beautiful on this track. It's a beautiful song, man. Beautiful song. Lyrically, it is such a powerful song. It's one that honestly, like, I still sing to myself all the time. You know, looking back on times in life where maybe, you know, everyone maybe has some time in their life they wish they could get back for one reason or another. And obviously there are other extremes, you know, whether it's drinking or things of that nature. You know, we all maybe have, even if it's only a couple of months of your life, you know, you want to look back and go, man, like I wish I could have that time back just to make better use of it. And I think that's kind of really what he's really talking about, man. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful fucking song. I cannot stress that enough, man. Beautiful song, the string arrangements. It's one that there's a live performance of that song that they did on TV. And it's just perfect. It's a perfect song, man. Absolutely beautiful ballad, if you want to call it that. With still some heaviness happening, moody, dark. Come on. What is not to love? So the next song we have, if I'm being honest, and I will always be honest when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's my least favorite track on the record, but it's still a great track. Whatever You Became, you know, basically, again, to me, kind of seems like a bit of a middle finger to somebody specifically. Whatever You Became, blame it on my fame. You know, obviously maybe a little bit of bitterness from someone about the music career of one that Scooter Ward. But instrumentally, great song. Vocally, another great song. That soaring chorus, like, come on, man, it's badass. Absolutely love it. But, you know, in the grand scheme of all 13 tracks, it's definitely my least favorite, which is saying something because I still really enjoy this song. And I sing along with that chorus, man, anytime it comes on. You know, definitely a killer track. The next song here that I want to talk about is one that has a really heavy story. And again, instrumentally speaking, super identifiable riff, heavy song. Scooter's vocals on this are killer. I think this is, I don't want to say it's my favorite track on the record, but I love the chorus on this track. I think it is so well written. It's a dark song, but it's sung so beautifully and raw from Scooter. He's singing this song to someone, and the story from this song that I heard from Scooter directly in an interview during the 13 Ways to Bleed on stage tour cycle. There was a girl who came up to them for an autograph, and she was expressing how much she loved Cold music and how much their music has helped her through some really difficult shit in her life. And basically, I don't want to tell this well, at the time, young woman, obviously, she's probably a little older than me, but basically this young woman at the time was going through some pretty dark shit with abuse with a family member, I believe, if I remember the story correctly. I don't want to say anything more than that, but there was some pretty serious shit going on there. And the guys were really affected by it because they said, like, our music helps you through that. Like, fuck us and our problems. Like, you're going through something real, like, and they wanted to do something. And, he said to this young woman, like, if me doing my thing helps you through this in any way, I'm going to keep doing this regardless, whatever demons I might come across or whatever, obviously I'm totally paraphrasing, but just to sum it up, if me doing this makes you happy, I'm going to keep going, man. And Sad Happy is basically an ode to her. And it's a story that it's based in reality, but it's a story of her basically getting revenge on these people, that, this really fucked up thing happened. And, it's just such a beautiful song. That fucking chorus, man, gets me. It really does. I swear, like, sometimes I'll be listening to this song and I'll just get serious goosebumps. I'll be strong, I will sing, and I'll take your pain away. Like, because he sounds like he's singing it to someone. That's because he really is. But then also, overall, I'm sure a lot of his fans can relate to that lyric, and that idea of him doing this and pouring out his emotions helps other people. And I know, as a young man filled with testosterone and confusing feelings and, things of that nature, having a message like that was really powerful, man. And I think that's why it's one of my favorite tracks on the record, if not my favorite track on the record. It's definitely, I don't think I have like a singular favorite track on this record, but Sad Happy is definitely, I'd say my top three. It's in my top three. I'm going to say for sure. Sad Happy is a classic Cold song, man. Just a badass song. So the next song we have to talk about here from Year of the Spider is Rain Song. Not the Led Zeppelin version. It is a different version. And I sing this song randomly to myself all the time. And basically, it's this really beautiful song about, I don't know if there's a more serious story behind it, but again, my interpretation is it's basically, someone who leaves your life. I believe the story of the song is someone who committed suicide. I could be totally wrong on this, so I apologize if I'm wrong on this, but just my interpretation lyrically is, he doesn't mind when it rains because he can feel this person. And it's such a beautiful song instrumentally. And again, that chorus, man, like, shout outs to Howard Benson for always, regardless of what the band is, he always brings it production wise. And I know that's a really signature thing of Howard Benson, but it's also a signature thing from Cold. That soaring chorus, man, it was so popular in that era. And that's something I think a lot of music misses nowadays. I miss those soaring, powerful choruses, man. And Rain Song has that. It really does. And it's such a beautiful song, a kind of a really dark, but kind of beautiful meaning behind it, man. Just badass track. So this next one really resonated with me because at the time I was also a little after, but I was really getting into Alice in Chains and Nirvana, mostly Nirvana at the time. So a couple of years later, when I kind of would revisit this record, which I'm going to talk about this in a little bit here, the revisiting of this record I do. The Day Seattle Died is a song about Kurt Cobain and Lane Staley. And because Scooter is a huge fan of Alice in Chains and Nirvana. And, you know, I used to be a humongous Nirvana fan. It's not that I'm not still a fan of them, but I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm a huge fan, because I'm just not anymore. It just kind of is what it is. But major respect, and you know, Nirvana was a huge part of my journey in the early years of high school for sure. But I'm a huge Lane Staley fan. I'm looking at my Lane Staley poster right now, man. Like I love Lane Staley and his work. And Scooter and the guys writing a song about the day Seattle died, man, because on April 5th, both Kurt Cobain shot himself and then Lane Staley overdosed. So writing a song basically about that. And the second verse, which is about Lane, it's so powerful lyrically, and as such a fan of Lane and Scooter singing and writing, it just like, it gives me goosebumps because it just encapsulates his struggle so much. I'm actually going to just quickly read that for you guys here. Drowning in misery, the nightmare began when you closed the door. You sat in your angry chair and just tried to be you. The needle became your queen. The drug had become your enemy. And music was just a way for you to bleed. The chorus is, you know, more about Kurt, you know, blown away by fame. We could all feel the shotgun hit the floor. Never learn in faith if you can't believe. But I mean, shit, it's, as a huge fan of the Seattle sound and that, I cannot be not a huge fan of this song. Day Seattle Died, definitely a big standout. And it's a song that a lot of people, again, they'll know this song, but they won't necessarily know the band behind the song. So Day Seattle Died, definitely a big standout and a song that, if you're a fan of Kurt Cobain and Lane Staley, you should check this song out. If for some reason you haven't. Well, the next song, Change the World, really cool, kind of vibey intro. You know, the drum work from Sam on this one is super cool. A lot of guitar effects and shit like that. And lyrically, it's funny. This song, the first time I heard it, it didn't really resonate with me. And fast forward a few years, when I went through my first breakup, lyrically, this song made so much goddamn sense to me and the situation I was in that I could have, like, not that I could have written it because it's a killer song, but like I could have written it as far as what I was trying to say. You know, I never wanted to change your world. I just wanted the simple things. And, you know, lyrically, the whole song, man, like word for word, you know, it could be said about the situation I was going through. And again, chorus, epic, big soaring chorus, man. And the fact that I related to this song so much, it's funny. Year of the Spider, one reason why it's a record that I wanted to pick for this too is at least I would say every couple of months, I randomly have a day where I will come back to this record and play it front to back all day. I don't know why. And I do this with a couple of records, but I don't think I do it with one singular record as much as I do with Year of the Spider. I just randomly I'll be chilling. It could be the best day ever. And I'd just be like, man, I got the itch. I got to listen to Year of the Spider again. And it's funny because when I was going through my breakup, I randomly had one of those days. And obviously this record is, I mean, it's basically fucking tailor-made for that kind of thing. But, you know, when I got to Change the World, you know, I was like, it hit me in a different way. And I was like, oh, like I understand what he's saying now. I understand what he is getting at with this, man. And it's such a cool thing when you can go back with, once you have some experience in life, and lyrics for songs can affect you differently and mean something differently for you, man. It's so cool. It's so cool to have that. So the next track that we have here is Black Sunday. Another really cool track. The intro vocally, it's very different. Acoustically, it's beautiful. You know, it's, I'm not even going to try and speculate on what the song is about. But you know, obviously it's something very raw and real. Just given the content of which he's speaking about, I believe it. I think a lot of things that I get with Scooter's lyrics is, I'm assuming he was possibly raised in his home, maybe, because there are some things that, you know, Cure My Tragedy, he talks about. It's, you know, he's basically speaking to God, and then Sad Happy, you know, he's talking about like the God that makes mistakes and things. Like, I don't know if there's something going on there. I mean, but to me, Black Sunday seems like a song that really is, it's raw. It's the longest actual song on the record too. And it's a badass song, man. The bridge, like, I love it. Absolutely love it, man. Would love to speculate more on the lyrics because I feel like this song is kind of, that's its main draw. But I'm not one that likes to speculate on what lyrics are about too much. But yeah, Black Sunday, badass song. Love the intro and the acoustic work on the song, as well as the lead work and the bass work and drum work, and badass song. So we now have come to technically the last song on the record. And it's interesting because this song is called Kill the Music Industry. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting about this record is this record should have been bigger than it was, in my opinion. And I would like to say a lot of the reason for that is because what happened with the album's second single. So, sorry, not with the second single. My apologies. The third single. So they dropped, obviously, Stupid Girl, had a video, huge song. Then they released Suffocate to the radio, and there was supposed to be a video for it. And for whatever unknown reasons, Geffen refused to make a video or promote the album any further after this single dropped. There was some weird stalemate, and it led to frustration within the band, and that's actually caused Terry to leave the band. And later, Kelly also to leave the band. And they tried to drop Wasted Years as the third single, but Geffen did not push it at all, and the album just died. 2004. Album just died. Suffocate dropped in June 10th of 2003. Supergirl dropped March 18th of 2003. And June 2003, they just stopped promoting this record. I would love to find out what the hell happened, because I want to say, man, if they pushed Suffocate, it could have been just as big of a song as Stupid Girl. If they pushed Wasted Years, it could have been just as big of a song as Stupid Girl. And it kind of breaks my heart when I hear stuff like that, because just bullshit industry politics or whatever the fuck. And that's what Kill the Music Industry is literally all about. I mean, The freaking chorus hook. You know, sick of all of this monotony, kill the fucking music industry. Sick of all this monotony, kill the fucking music industry. And it's basically a call to arms from the guys. And that freaking riff just, it gets me every goddamn time. I love that riff so much. The second I heard that riff, I grabbed my guitar because I knew it was in a different tuning too. That's one thing that kind of interesting to note for all you guitar players out there. A lot of this record's in B sharp, drop B sharp. Yes, I believe so. Someone that ball. Drop B sharp, D sharp, drop B sharp. Yes, that makes sense. Or D sharp standard, which is the standard version of drop B sharp, or drop B somewhere in that. It's not drop C. But Kill the Music Industry is in drop C. So the second I heard that, I grabbed my guitar and tried to learn it. I freaking love this song so much. Big middle finger to the music industry, man. And especially after with what happened to Year of the Spider, still very early on in its cycle, it's kind of interesting to note, like, you know, hey, did they piss off someone at the label with this song? Like, was this song directed at somebody? I mean, it was directed at the music industry. It was directed at record executives for sure. But was someone specific hear that song and go, like, maybe after the fact, maybe it slipped through the cracks, you know? And they were just like, oh, that's what you think, hey? Well, fuck you. We're going to pull your funding and you're not getting anything. And man, it breaks my heart for that story, man, because this record should have been. It was a, don't get me wrong, it was a great record, but it should have been way bigger in my opinion. And you know, I mean, it's certified gold record. That's awesome. That's awesome for any band to achieve that. But I think it could have been a platinum record myself personally, but that's neither here nor there. So with this song, track 13, Kill the Music Industry, there is a hidden track. After Kill the Music Industry, after 13 minutes and 13 seconds of silence, which was actually a reference to their previous effort, 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage, as well as the whole number 13 superstition thing, a hidden track called Gone Away comes on. And Gone Away is such a beautiful song. I mean, geez, it's a beautiful kind of mellow ballad song. And it actually appeared on WWE's Tough Enough too, by the way, which is, I think they wrote it for that, possibly. But it was actually originally written, Scooter wrote it for his daughter. And it's, you know, it's basically just about him missing his family while on the road, the necessary evil of it. And there's a lot to say for that with wrestling. You know, Ward said, you know, and I quote, leaving home all the time, never being here because we were on the road. I thought that wrestlers must feel the same way because they travel a lot. They leave their family and all that. So I figured I'd just send this song in, you know, to them and think they'd pick it up. And they did. You know, he didn't think it was going to be a thing, but it definitely resonated with the man. And it's something that a lot of people who maybe aren't around as much as they would like, can relate to that, man. And, you know, it is, it's a beautiful song, and the video for it too, like his daughter's in the video. Like, it's a really powerful, beautiful fucking song, man. And it's another one I can't help but sing along anytime it comes on. Definitely a favorite of mine on Year of the Spider. And what else can I say about Year of the Spider, man? I mean, like I said, it's a record I come back to all the time. It's a record that was super important to me due to mostly the effect that it had on me lyrically and vocally, also guitar, of course. But I mentioned earlier, I've mentioned a couple times about how, like, I didn't really realize the effect it had on me until I was older. And to tell that story before we end off here today, basically fast forward to when I went through my breakup and stuff. This was freaking 10 years ago now, but to tell the story, I have to quickly talk about this. You know, I was going through a rough time, as everyone does after a breakup. And, you know, there was a lot of music that was really resonating with me, but also I was writing a lot and I was wanting to really go hard on trying to write and release some stuff. And I was playing with my boy, Patrick Delaire. And in this time period, I was listening to a lot of Five Finger Death Punch as well. And there was some stuff where I would like, I would do this thing where he would write music and I was always talking about shit and this and that. And the one day I remember going over to his place and he just basically shoved the microphone in my face and said, just do it and get it out. And I thought during this time period that I was channeling my inner Ivan Moody a lot. And I basically one day I'm standing in front of the microphone and there was this one song we were working on that I had to kind of sing really mellow. And I'm doing, I mean, I'm not a singer. I just was doing it for, you know, the outlet, which is what music is to me, man. And I'm singing these lyrics that are so raw and just like gritty. And I'm basically crying while I'm singing and letting out this emotion. But the way I was singing, like after I was done, I was listening back to it and I was like, fuck, I am literally trying so hard to be Scooter Ward. And it hit me like a brick wall. And I went back and I was listening to some stuff I had done. And I was just like, just the mellow-esque type of singing where, you know, he doesn't go crazy up in and he's not always yelling and screaming his head off and shit. He doesn't need to do that to get his emotion across. And that's something that I didn't realize how much of a profound effect his vocal style had on me. And I sat back and was just kind of like blown away, like, fuck, like, you know, I guess I was more influenced by him than I thought. And sure enough, like when I then went back and started and listened to Year of the Spider, you know, Don't Belong, the reference I made earlier, it really just hit me that I was like, fuck, man, Scooter Ward's low key one of my favorite vocalists and has been for a long time. And I just didn't really appreciate it until I kind of went through some shit and had some darkness, so to speak, to really truly appreciate the beauty of this record and the raw emotion of this record and of Scooter Ward's vocals and lyrics. And to this day, man, that's something that people ask me all the time. You know, who's some people you'd love to have on the show? And honest to God, I've answered before, but Scooter Ward's one of those people, man. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and the ones that he does, I feel like they never do it justice. I would love the opportunity to pick his fucking brain, just hear his story, and, you know, just be a fly on the wall. I don't even necessarily want to interview him myself. I just want to be in the room and listen to that man talk about his story and how he does things in his writing. And, you know, I'm so influenced by him. And Cold, to this day, are still making badass music. After Year of the Spider, 2005, they drop A Different Kind of Pain, which is a fucking beautiful record inside and out, man. I mentioned, you know, that a lot of the materials about Scooter's sister battling cancer. A Different Kind of Pain, you know, it's a different type of thing that he went through, and the pain that he was going through was different from anything that he experienced, because, like, it's, you know, it's something that you can't. It's just like the waves crashing on the shore. You can't. There's nothing you can do, no matter how much you might wish upon a fallen star or anything like that. And that song, A Different Kind of Pain, man, I implore you guys to go check it out because it's just a beautiful fucking song. I just got goosebumps thinking about that song. I love that record. I really love that record. Like I said, it's a close second to this record as far as, you know, my favorite material from Cold. And then 2008, Cold dropped another record that was really a killer record called Super Fiction, because they broke up in 2009, and then they broke up, I think it was 2006, 7, something in that ballpark. Scooter did some other stuff and then came back in 2009, got back together with Sam and some other members. They did Super Fiction. They did a live record, which is badass. You got to go check out that live record, man. You know, the version of Bleed on that and the version of Cure My Tragedy is beautiful. And then 2019, they released The Things We Can't Stop. And man, it's a more mature version of Cold. And it's not as, there's a lot of beauty in this record and a lot of positivity. Shine was kind of like the lead single. It's literally basically a love letter to the fans of just how, you know, Scooter wants to see them shine and wants to see you go for the win. And just, it's a really different vibe, but it's so good. And the musicians that Scooter has in Cold now are great. It's different. It's not Year of the Spider Cold, which I like that. I like when bands evolve, and I really love that record. It's one that kind of flew under the radar a little bit, and I wish it hadn't because it's such a killer record. I did see a couple fans say like, "Oh, I wish there was more heavier stuff," and it's like, listen. My whole thing with music and bands is you know, you have to be true to yourself. And Scooter Ward, as a musician, he offers, like I said this already, but man, he offers a realness and a rawness to his audience. That's what he has to offer you. So he's always going to be genuine because he has to be. That's what he has to give you. And that record, man, The Things We Can't Stop is really, it's growth, it's positive. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still lots of dark elements on it and stuff, but it's killer. It's a killer record. And I'm so happy that Cold are still going and kicking ass. I hope that I will get an opportunity to see Cold live one day. That would be killer. And I'm grateful as hell, because Cold's Year of the Spider is an album that made me. And without it, I would not be the human being that I am today. I would not be the music fan I am today. Hell, I wouldn't be the podcaster I am today without this record. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this rambly but almost cathartic conversation here today of me talking about Year of the Spider. This was so much fun to do. I've been smiling the entire time talking about this and reminiscing about that time in my life and the record and the songs. Go buy this record. It's going to be tricky to find in, like, not online, obviously, because there are still obviously some record stores. I actually stopped into my local record shop to see if they had this record, because I do own this CD somewhere. But in my move, I seem to have misplaced it. I was looking for it earlier and can't seem to find it. I know it's in a box somewhere, but I just can't seem to find it. But I was like, oh man, like, I'd love to have all the records I'm going to talk about on this segment. I'd love to have a version of it like in wrapping that's just left untouched, because I played the shit out of that record. So, you know, the casing is I think the case is cracked, and, like, you know, I used my CDs, man. I really did. But go check it out. Go buy the new record. It's awesome. Support Cold. If you're listening to this and Cold's coming to your town or your area and you dig Year of the Spider or any of their other work, go check them out, man. They seriously deserve your support. They are they're a band that deserves a lot more credit in my opinion, but are just one of my favorites, one of my absolute favorites for sure. And this was a lot of fun sharing this with you guys. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know some records that made you. Let me know. And who knows? Maybe you'll come on this podcast and talk about it. Could be fun. Could be fun to get some musicians on here talking about one specific record. Could be a lot of fun doing that. Just saying, man. If you listen to this and you're interested, hit your boy up and we'll maybe get something going. But without further ado, I'm going to sign off here today. Thank you guys so very much again for tuning into this brand new segment. Hope you had fun. I'll catch you next time on The Harder Show. Take it easy, guys.